Warning. The following video contains potential spoilers for Symphogear EXIV. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, Anime Visor here, with a review for Symphogear EXIV. Symphogear isn't all about Chris Signum. If anything, we both know that Symphogear tends to be geared more towards Hibiki, though much to my delight, for the most part, this season did offer up a fairly large dose of Tsubasa content, but more on that later. For those of you who don't know, Symphogear EXIV is the 5th and final season of Symphogear. If you're familiar with Symphogear, you can go ahead and leave a comment letting us know your thoughts on the series. Symphogear EXIV takes place shortly after the events of Symphogear Axis, the 4th season of Symphogear, and deals with the remnants of the Bavarian Illuminati known as Noble Red. And of course, this being Symphogear, things escalate to cataclysmic proportions. Up front, Symphogear is known for its over-the-top, high-paced action. It can get pretty absurd, but is filled with fun, likable characters, and for the most part, gets away with a lot of its weaker writing or story elements. That continues to hold form here in Symphogear EXIV. I very much enjoyed watching the season and all the crazy fun it was, but when it came to the climax and starting to wrap things up, it kind of falls on its face, mainly because it had too many storylines it was trying to wrap up, and not enough time to do it. Well, there was Noble Red and them not wanting to be treated like monsters, but being treated like a monster tends to happen when you massacre a stadium full of concert goers. That leads us to Tsubasa, who is dealing with the trauma of watching her fans get slaughtered. Side note, that's not the first time that's happened to her either, while also being brainwashed by her grandfather. It's a story arc that lasted almost the entire season, but kind of feels underwhelming because it gets quickly resolved to make room for the Miku stuff. The Miku stuff leads to some crazy pre-civilization moon stuff that ties to Maria as well as Fine, not to mention at the same time there's the story with Carol and Elf 9. All while the Symphogear users are trying to save the world, so the series also commits a lot of its time to fight scenes instead, leaving, as I said, not much time to wrap up all the storylines. If I had to say what Symphogear EXIV needed, it needed at least another episode to properly wrap up some of these storylines. Have an episode dedicated to an epilogue to properly say farewell to all the characters. This was confirmed to be the final season. A little moment for each of the characters would have been nice. You know it's bad when this season spent a lot of time focusing on Tsubasa's story, and she only gets a 20-second scene at the end, and doesn't even have a speaking line. It's a nice scene, showing that she isn't alone anymore, but considering how much time the season spent following her, it would have been at least nice to have her have a line, especially considering where this scene takes place. Kirika and Shirabe, outside their transformation scenes, are practically non-existent the entire season. While Chris got a decent amount of story last season, she too is practically a no-show outside a fight scene or two this season. I'm kinda surprised because Chris and Tsubasa seem to have gotten close in Symphogear G and GX, but neither of them were really all that involved in each other's stories the last 2 seasons. Maria becomes somewhat relevant toward the end at least, but I feel it could have done a better job foreshadowing what was going on with her sooner. Weirdly, as spontaneous as it comes about, the Carol and Elf 9 stuff was probably the best handled. It was short, confined, and to the point. It didn't drag on the entire season and feel unsatisfying in the end like Tsubasa's. And it strongly conveys that even if Carol is gone, Elf 9 will remember her, and becomes a defining moment for her character. Something that can't be said for the Miku and Hibiki scene. The Miku and Hibiki scene I find incredibly unsatisfying, as it just implies their relationship. Might I add, a relationship that has been implied, and has been more heavily implied, since back in season 1. This wasn't some turning point or defining moment that showed either of them in a new light. This isn't the Starry Sky scene from Monogatari, where we learn that Senju Gahara, despite still recovering and getting over her past, wants to give Araragi all she can. For those wondering, she wants to give him her help studying, her cute little junior, her curt father, and these stars. Anyway, the scene in Symphogear definitely tries to invoke a mutual love between Miku and Hibiki, but it's not something we didn't already know. and it doesn't take their relationship a step further than what it already was. They didn't have to kiss or anything, but one of them could have at least asked the other to go out for dinner sometime. It just feels like a very soft, non-committal stance on their relationship by the showrunners. Despite not loving that the series didn't spend any time giving its characters a proper send-off, I assume Signum, still very much enjoy Symphogear. Symphogear EXIF has its fair share of problems, but what's crucial and more important is that it never stopped being fun. As much as I didn't like how the story wrapped things up in the end, I'm kinda used to the story of Symphogear being a bit pants. So I put most of that to the side and enjoy the over-the-top action with a fun group of characters singing songs, so that said characters can save the world. And occasionally it does do some story stuff well, which is just a nice little bonus with this series. If you want to watch a hard-hitting narrative, Symphogear is probably not what you're looking for. But if you're looking for something fun and over the top with a really likable cast of characters, then consider giving Symphogear a shot. As much as I've complained about the lack of it wrapping up its characters and story, Symphogear's Blu-rays have always included some chibi shorts that give a little more context to the events of the series, so hopefully things will get expanded on a little more there, regarding the characters having a proper send-off. But it doesn't change the fact that I wish Symphogear EXIF had found the time to do it before it ended. With all that said, that'll wrap up my thoughts on Symphogear EXIF. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, I've been AnimeVisor. Thanks for watching. Tsubasa concerts are apparently quite dangerous, and goodbye.